Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Danny Gillette, and we're here to talk some Nebraska football recruiting. It was a big weekend for the Huskers. They got three new recruits, or three new commitments, I should say, on Monday. I know you were busy writing up a lot of stuff on Sunday, Danny, so what are your thoughts on these new 2024 pledges for the Huskers?
Well, one of the things I really like is that Nebraska is doing a three-step process. They're offering a kid, they're getting the kid to, a camp that's run by these coaches, and then the kids they like, they're getting to commit. So at the very least, there's a plan of get them here, get them offered, get them here, get them to commit, and I like the follow through with that. I do think that there is a lot of value in running these camps, and I understand a little bit of the worry in the fact that some of the commitments aren't necessarily highly ranked, but I do think it may be a case of some of these players, and we'll get to them in a minute, kind of getting overlooked. I trust the staff in their evaluation process, and I think they have an idea of what they want to look for in a player, and from that end of it, I think that's a little bit better than just offering random kids and getting them to commit with no plan whatsoever.
Yeah, so over the weekend on Sunday, Braylon Prude from Shadow Creek, Texas, 6'4", 190, linebacker, safety type committed. Also Jake Peters, offensive lineman from Iowa, 6'3", 265. And then Kaelin Barta, safety, 6'2", 180. So all of them have been bumped up. They're 3 stars now in the 24/7 composite rankings. They all rank outside the top 1,000. And yeah, it's an interesting
It's interesting that
process.
you say that. Hold on one second. It's interesting that you say that because they commit to Nebraska, they get stars like that. That's interesting. I mean, just
Well,
shows
it's
you.
pretty.
I mean,
I mean, it's the 24/7 sports does take commitments into, so it's pretty. It's pretty standard across the board when that type of thing happens. Is that they'll upgrade them.
I'm, and I get that there's a lot of kids, but I don't know why you wouldn't at least evaluate them to the point where they at least get, 3 stars in general. Because Cole's kicking camp does a good job of evaluating, kickers and punters, and that just is wild to me that like one or two even offers can lead to stars. But anyway, I'll let you finish before I go on a tangent.
Well, yeah, that's just 24/7. Like if you look at their formula, they calculate regional bias, and then offers. They calculate offers and then commitments. So I mean, you'll see that quite a bit. I mean, Bryce Turner was the same way. All these guys
With knives.
were most of these guys were ranked by 24/7, like Jake Peters and Kalen Barta. I think
Yeah.
Braylon Prude might have been too, but they just weren't ranked in the composite as 3-star players yet. So now they are. I don't know what calculation goes into that, or if other recruiting services have upgraded their skill set. So at any rate, it's interesting to get, it's good to have them be ranked as the 3 stars. And I'm not saying that rankings or everything. My point, and I think this is just an interesting topic of conversation, is where Nebraska's kind of building this class, right? Because we talked about this a little bit, but Nebraska is really going. I mean, I think that they've realized that getting 4-star players in this class just probably isn't that likely. I mean, we've seen a lot of, I mean, they've tried and a lot of positions, but offensive tackle, running back, it just hasn't really worked out. So I think that they are going a bit of a different route. I mean, Matt Rule did this last year too, with the way he kind of evaluates and holding the camps and stuff. And you do get, players. And I think that the one thing is they're not just taking guys that, like Braylon Prude could be a really good player. I mean, he's got the measurables. They've all got that NFL skill set. And so you're kind of banking on them, obviously outplaying their ranking and, getting that, developed process, banking on their, athleticism and their measurables and stuff like that, which I totally understand. I think that's a good strategy. I just don't know if you want to, right now, I mean, so we're looking, we've got, 12 commitments. I mean, so if you're getting up to like a 20 player class, I don't think you want half your class to be guys that, you're the first offer, you know what I mean, that haven't been offered by another, FBS or a Power 5 program. I can understand having a chunk of your class, 4 or 5 guys, but I just think that, with the transfer portal and all those other, like because each one of these guys that you're taking right now, that's taking away a guy you could get from the transfer portal. You know what I mean? That's like a proven starter in college football. So you really have to. I mean, I do think you need to have these younger guys on your roster, but I think you have to limit that to a point because you don't want to be, you do want to be old in this world of college football. So it is a double-edged sword. I understand that you want to develop these guys, and I do trust the coaching staff and Matt Rule in terms of their evaluations, but those projections of guys, becoming like a low 3-star to an NFL player, like that does happen. And I do think Nebraska will make that happen. But like, say you have 5 guys like that, maybe one is going to turn into something, maybe 1 or 2, you know what I mean? So that's just my opinion on it. I don't think you want to have too many guys in your class that kind of fit that mold of an evaluation offer type prospect.
Well, there's also, you can't do a ton when you don't know how everything is going to go. And whether these guys are going to be legitimate players or placeholders or whatever, we don't know how the 2023 season is going to go. And quite frankly, we don't know how, this offensive style is going to work, how this defensive style is going to work. It looked great during the spring game defensively, for example, but you can never really get a good gauge of those things from a spring game. So, I think for what they've been able to do so far, I think they've done a pretty decent job. And I think that once the season gets underway, then we'll have a chance to really kind of assess, and recruits will have a chance to really kind of assess what this is all about. And in today's world of recruiting, all of what happened yesterday can change in 5 seconds. So at the very least, they have a couple guys that are projects, but that they can work with, and they're I think each of them has talent, and I think especially a guy like Prude, kind of embodies what Nebraska football is looking for on their defense. A guy that can run quickly from side to side, runs good downhill, has the versatility in a 3-3-5 defense because they want this defense to be positionless, so to speak. So I do think you know there is a plan for these guys, whether or not that plan will work out or whether or not these players will work out remains to be seen. But you know, at the very least, I saw, I was watching all these guys yesterday, their huddle films, and I could see why Nebraska got them to commit.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that, they're all going to be bad players or anything, but it's going to take time to, develop these guys. And so we'll see. I just think, the bottom line is that these 3 past commitments, that are 3 lowest ranked guys outside of, Cook. So, or Coke. So, I mean, it's not, a knock on any of those guys or anything like that. I just think at the end of the day, this recruiting class, I don't think that it's gone the way that the staff thought it was going to go in January and December, to be honest with you. I think that they thought they were going to hit on more big names in this cycle. And I think they've done a good job adjusting and kind of, realizing that, hey, that's not, it's not realistic. Brandon Baker, Nathaniel Frazier, like these guys aren't coming. So I do think that they've made some adjustments in that way and, started, kind of evaluating a little bit more and saying, hey, we're going to have to find the diamonds in the rough until we do establish something here at Nebraska. So, I mean, it is a good on those lines. And I would rather them, take a player that has the ability to develop, into an NFL type prospect. I just think that, if you take too many of those boomer bust type guys, that can put you kind of in a tough situation. But that's just where Nebraska is right now. They have to take chances on those guys and hope that, their development works out.
And this is also why Matt Rule has an 8-year contract, so he can kind of figure everything out, and see what works best. But
I mean,
I
every deal is a 3-year contract.
I mean, I
If he doesn't have a
yeah,
winning season by year 3, he's toast. I mean,
that buyout is going to be quite expensive though. And with how much money they've quite frankly pissed away in contracts already, I think they would think long and hard before, trying to can him after 3 years, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see. I mean, this coaching staff has shown that they can work hard, but we have yet to see the results on the field. I mean,
I mean, I
think
don't think that'll happen. I think Matt
no, I
Rule's
don't
going
think
to
that'll
win
happen
here,
either.
but if he doesn't have a winning season by year 3, I 100% believe he'll be gone. Absolutely, he'll be fired in no time. Like, there's no way he's making it to year 4 if he hasn't had a winning season by
Yeah,
then. That's my opinion, but I know the buyout is what it is, but I just think that because and by that point, I mean Trev will probably be trying to fire him to save his job. So
I was gonna
Trev
say, yeah, if
Trev will
Matt
probably be
Rule's
gone
gone,
too.
yeah, if Matt Rule's gone, like this is all on Trev now, and if Matt Rule goes, then Trev will go, and we'll continue the revolving door of coaches, athletic directors, yada yada yada. And I don't know. I don't even want to think about that, but I don't think that we're gonna end up in a situation like we did with Scott Frost. I really don't. I think the
Yeah,
staff is very focused and very determined, and hopefully
we got
they'll
an alarm going off. One
all
sec.
good.
Okay, sorry about that.
I had to snooze my alarm about 7 times this morning, so I totally understand where you're coming from, but yeah, I don't get that vibe with Matt Rule that I did with Scott Frost. I mean, I think, they hired a search firm to, figure out the best coaching candidates, and Matt Rule was who they came away with. He seems to be bought into what Nebraska's trying to do. He seems to be bought in to the state itself. So I don't know if this will turn out like Scott Frost. I do have optimism, but I'm quite honestly, if there was a year to win, just looking at the schedule, it would be this year. I mean, this is a very favorable schedule, I think, and I think once the wins start to come, the recruiting will be a little bit better as well.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that they are going to get this program turned around for sure. I'm confident in that. I would rather see them. I would rather see them keep the recruiting numbers low, keeping in mind that you can do a lot in the transfer portal now. I don't think you need to take like 25 recruits in this class. I don't think that Nebraska is going to, but especially if you're filling it up with these guys that you're camping and evaluating. I'm not trying to dig on those guys at all. I'm just saying you are inherently taking a little bit more of a risk, I think, on those types of players. So, like I said, about a third of the class, I can see, 7, 8 guys. I think that that's legitimate because I do trust their evaluation process a little bit. But it does worry me when, Nebraska's the first Power 5 team to make an offer. There's no other. I mean, it's one thing if the guy's got like a bunch of Mountain West offers, but if you're going from like FCS up to right to Nebraska, then yeah, it does worry me just a little bit. Not saying that this coaching staff can't find diamonds in the rough and things like that, but it's just it is what it is, and I think you don't want to have too many of those types of commitments in your recruiting class if you're Nebraska.
And one thing that worries me, and we were kind of talking about it a little bit, is the lack of depth at the running back position. I think the running back position. We saw that Micah Kapana committed to Michigan over the weekend. I know he was scheduled to visit Nebraska this coming Friday, and that's obviously off the table now. So I'll be interested to see what they do at running back. I know they have Quentin Ives and you know possibly others coming. Coming down the tunnel here, but I think you need to have good running back depth for the Big Ten. And after Anthony Grant, he's gonna leave after this year, and then you have Gabe Irvin, and beyond that, not a ton of depth. So I'll be interested to see if Nebraska can kind of salvage something at the running back position too.
Yeah, they are scrambling a little bit at the running back. I mean, they have been actually scrambling at the running back position for quite a while because the Capona thing's been coming down the pike. Keywan Lacey went to Ole Miss. Another guy that was going to be visiting this weekend committed to Minnesota. So they really have some work to do at the running back position because Nathaniel Frazier is definitely not happening. He's going to Alabama or USC or so. I mean, I wouldn't even waste my time recruiting him at this point. Same with Brandon Baker. Like, it's just a waste of time. I mean, to be honest. So invest your time in a player that you can actually get at this point. So they need to reset, themselves at the running back position. And I'm actually surprised that they weren't able to find an offer at one of these camps at that position because I can't even point to anybody that they've offered that is like a realistic, commitment at this point. I'll have to look at the board a little bit more, but They've got some work to do there, and this weekend coming up is going to be a big weekend with the big visits. I mean, Carter Nelson's expected to come in. Isaiah McMorris. So they really need to finish on these guys. There hasn't been much buzz around Carter Nelson since the visit to Georgia. There hasn't been any other predictions or anything. So I mean, he's really like the last elite type player I think Nebraska has a shot at in this 2024 class. Things could change obviously after the season starts, but I think that Matt Rhule, he even talked about this too on one of his, with one of his interviews or whatever, but there's not very many spots after these summer months. You're going to get through this last week of June. A bunch of guys are going to commit in July. And like, if you look at the top 24/7, like probably 80-90% of the guys are going to be committed. So it's not, once the season starts, there's still obviously going to be recruiting. And especially in that late period, a lot of top ranked players, are available in that time period. And Nebraska could have a great season, and that could totally, surge things. I mean, we've seen that, with some other classes in the years past. But these next few weeks are going to be really important, and especially this official visit with Carter Nelson. I think it's going to, tell the tale. I think he's going to make a decision in July. That's just reading, the tea leaves. I have no intel on that, but it seems like he wants to get this process over with before his senior season. Most kids do, and I think it seems to me like he's giving Nebraska that last chance, but I don't know. It's hard to read. It's a hard situation to read with Carter Nelson.
And I think we honestly have a better shot at Isaiah McMorris than we do Carter Nelson. But I mean, I think there's always this kind of saying in recruiting that you want this last visit. Get the last visit for a kid that you want and see if you can seal the deal. So I think if they want Nelson, I mean, this weekend's going to be big for them. It's going to be big for them. And, I do think I'll be interested to watch the Michael Burt commitment or the Michael Burt, recruitment, and seeing if there's any more, positive news to come out of that, because I know he said in an interview yesterday that he was impressed with Nebraska. So I'll be interested to see what happens with his recruitment, because I think a commitment to Nebraska or no commitment at all will tell a lot about where the Huskers stand with Nelson. Because although they don't need another tight end, I do think, if you put Kaelin Smith at wide receiver, for example, then you need depth at the position.
Yeah. Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, I think, the numbers part of it, aren't that where I guess we'll see if they take Burt and Carter Nelson. It could get pretty crowded there, but my guess would be that they would take both. That's just my thought. I don't think it's gonna, it's not like I don't think they're telling Michael Burt to wait or anything on a commitment for Carter Nelson. It seems like I would just take Michael Burt and then, kind of go from there. But we'll see. I don't think that they're going to win out with Carter Nelson, but we'll see what happens. I think, Daniel Kaelin being there is definitely going to help. They were on an unofficial visit together. I do think Nebraska needs to land Isaiah McMorris. That's going to be, if they miss him, that's going to be a black eye on this recruiting class. Like, that's just, he plays on the same team as your quarterback. He's right there. I mean, you have to get that. There's no other like big name school making a hard push for Isaiah McMorris. Like, you have to get his commitment, and they need to get it soon after this weekend, in my opinion.
Because not only would you miss out on Isaiah McMorris, you missed out on Damon Hall. So those are two right there that you got to land one or the other. At this point, it's McMorris, but if they miss out on both, then that's certainly kind of a bummer, to be quite honest with you, because
especially if Davon Hall goes to Kansas State, that is weird to me. I don't get that.
I don't get that either. I really don't. I think Nebraska would have given him a better chance to succeed, but we'll see. I mean, there's also the end where, some recruits may not be, sold on Garrett McGuire yet either, and that could play a factor in it too. But if they don't get McMorris, then that's certainly, a downward trend in terms of this class, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's just a guy that, he's a top 500 recruit, and I just think that, he's a must get in this class. I mean, I would say that about Carter Nelson too. It's just, that's going to be hard to, that's a hard bar to put, with all the other, with Georgia interested in him too. I mean, obviously I think it would, if Georgia was offering Isaiah McMorris, obviously would feel a little bit differently about it. So I just feel like with everything that Nebraska has going for it, that's a recruitment they need to win. I am interested to see with Carter Nelson though, and I think that Daniel Kaelin has been a great peer recruiter, and maybe he can help seal the deal, because I do think that there's still a chance for Nebraska with Carter Nelson. I don't think it's over yet, because I do think that if he was going to make his commitment, I think that he at least respects the coaching staff enough to make that. Like, I don't think he's taking this visit just like for obligatory reasons. You know what I mean? And there could be some of that, like with him being an in-state kid, and I know the program probably means a lot to him, whatever wherever he ends up choosing. But it'll be interesting, this visit. He's definitely the guy that I'll be watching, along with McMorris. But those are the two that I'll be seeing if they can make some movement with.
And it could also be something as simple as a kid that wants to go out of state for college. I mean, that's a part of it too that I think often gets overlooked. But it's interesting how much good depth Georgia has, and there's only so many targets to go around, only so many throws to go around if you're a quarterback. So I'm very interested to see how big of a push Georgia will make, and if Georgia can seal a deal on Nelson, because with Georgia's tight end room, he may be able to start right away, but I don't think it would be as clear a path to starting, at Georgia as it would be at Nebraska. Nebraska, I think he could start day one.
Yeah, definitely, at least, get into the mix for sure. So yeah, just looking, I'm looking at the list of official visits. So kind of some interesting. Keywan Lacey, is another running back. He hasn't committed yet. He's been trending pretty hard to, Ole Miss with. I think he's got some crystal balls and stuff. So he's still slated as an official visitor. Maybe they can, flip something around with him. He's a guy that we've been talking about along the same lines as Capana. They were kind of the top. They seem like they were the top of the board after Frazier, so we'll see. Maybe that'll change. I do see now on 3 that Quinn Clark is coming in for official visit this weekend, so that piques my interest a little bit. I know they've actually got official visitors today. Donovan Jones is taking an official visit. Michael Turner, another wide receiver from Louisiana, is going to be on campus for an unofficial visit, so that'll be kind of interesting to see where the wide receiver position's going. But Quinn Clark to me seems like they might be willing to take him. I'm not, just the fact that they're getting him, it was like Braylon Prude, right? They offered him, and then that's why, like last weekend, I think on Friday before the official visit, like he was one of the guys that I said could commit. Jake Peters was another one. But it's like if you're taking a kid that doesn't have any other Power 5 offers, you get him from camp, you offer him, you get him on campus for an official visit. Like, to me, that says that they're pretty serious about him. And Prude, that's the method that they followed. The same with Peters, and I think Quinn Clark, it looks like they're going down that same kind of modus operandi. He's 6'6", he's got a verified 40 time of 4.5. He's a jumper, he's a sprinter, he plays basketball. I mean, so he does a lot of different things, and the fact that they offered him and now are taking him back for an official visit, to me it seems like they want a big receiver in this class, a 6'4", 6'5" wide receiver, and Quinn Clark could be that guy. And he's not quite as athletic as Malachi Coleman, but he's got a very similar type of build, and he's a similar, type of athlete, just to a lesser extent, I guess I would say.
And along with Clark, another guy I'm watching that's visiting this weekend is Caleb Benning. He's been trending to Nebraska for quite a while, so I'm wondering when he will pull the trigger on a commitment. But I feel like Nebraska has a very, very good chance at Benning, and it's only a matter of time, before he commits to Nebraska.
Yeah, that is good to get him on campus for an official visit. So, I mean, you look at Benning is a big one. Ernest Campbell's going to be there. Grant Bricks is another big, interior offensive lineman that's like a Kansas State, Nebraska, battle right now, a Midwest recruit. So a key thing for me, I think, with Nebraska is not only I want to see them start winning, some of these Midwest recruitments again, like Andrew Sprague, who ended up going to Michigan. I think Nebraska was pretty close in that one. Like that's a guy that's like a top 50, top 150 guy that's like a winnable recruitment out of St. Louis, right? Like those are some of the, like, that was a much more winnable recruitment than Brandon Baker out of California. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like those are some ones. That's why like Grant Bricks would be like a really big recruiting victory, I think, in my opinion. So I mean, outside of Carter Nelson, he's like a big, a big visitor. Isaiah McHorst. There's a lot of different receivers on campus. I know Evan Taylor, another receiver, also got a crystal ball yesterday, I believe, or an expert projection. So there's a lot of moving parts at the wide receiver board, and I think after this weekend, we'll have a lot more clarity of who Nebraska's going to take. Personally, I wouldn't mind if they just took, McMorris and, Quinn Clark and essentially called it a day after that point.
What do you know about the edge defender? I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. Devo Tuataga. He's coming in this weekend, and I haven't really done my homework on him, but he's a high 80s recruit. In terms of numerical value, he's trending right now to Nebraska via the On3 recruiting prediction machine. Um, Nebraska's at 32%, Oregon's at 28%. So do you know anything about him? He's coming in for an official this weekend as well.
I don't know much about him, just scanning his profile here.
He's an 88, which is a
Yeah.
very, very high 3-star. So
He's 6'6", 225, which those types of players always really, stand out with when you're playing an odd front, you want big, long players, so 6'6", because that to me is like he could be an edge, or if he really can grow into his body, he could even be like a 5 technique, down the road. So he did just take an official visit to Oregon last weekend. He's out of the state of Utah. He took unofficial visits to Utah and BYU in January and Tennessee, and so none of them have kind of followed up with official visits, which is somewhat interesting. This tends to happen with some of these West Coast kids. You'll see this. I don't know why. I have no idea why it's like that, but it just seems like, and it could just be totally my perception, but it seems like there's more kids from like Utah and Wyoming, California, that Arizona too, that they don't seem to, their recruitments don't pick up till later in the cycle, like in late summer and the fall. I'm not sure why. This seems like one of them, because it's like there's a lot of other kids that are really good. I mean, he's ranked 514 in the On3 industry rankings, so it's like, why doesn't that guy have more than one official, or like more than 2 official visits set up? So it's interesting, like guys like this will take some more visits in the fall. But yeah, I would think Nebraska would have a good opportunity. Oregon just hosted him, and they're a big threat for anybody on the West Coast. But yeah, well, Nebraska's trending up. I'm not sure why that they are in that spot, in the number 1 spot, because it's usually based on visits and things like that. So it's kind of hard to understand the On3 prediction machine, because it's based on like visits, the recruit's ranking, past recruiting history. So like if it was probably Brandon Baker or somebody, like Nebraska probably wouldn't have as good of a chance with the On3 prediction machine, because it's a whole bunch of factors that go into it. I do think it is smarter in some ways than the crystal ball, because there are other factors that play into it. But I think they have a good chance. I'd have to study his film though, but he's probably another guy that has really big upside. I think that's a pretty clear thing with the Rule coaching staff and method. I think that they're very confident that, and he said that, like, I can teach people how to play football. I can't teach somebody how to run the 100-meter dash in 10.5. I can't teach that, but I can teach somebody how to catch and how to run, how to block, how to tackle. Like, football's not a skill game really outside of the quarterback position. It's really, I mean, I don't really even think of catching a ball as like, most of the time you either have that natural ability or you don't. I mean, that's just, I mean, yes, you can improve your hands, you can improve your arm strength for that matter. But for the most part, football is still, a physical, violent game. And it's about having that natural set of talents. And this staff is very confident they can get those out of those players. And I think there's a good reason to believe that they're right.
And I don't think your perception about West Coast recruiting is too far off, because even when you look at the 2023 class, Sua Latofu committed in January. So, I mean, it's almost like there is quite literally a different time zone and a different like time element to West Coast recruiting. So I don't think you're crazy for thinking that at all. But yeah, no, I'll be interested to see how the peer recruiters do this weekend. Gibson Pyle is coming to town, Kaelin's coming to town, and I read in an article the other day that the offensive line itself has, created a strong bond between, the commits and recruits. So that's always a good thing to hear as well. And, I think a lot of people sometimes underestimate the value of peer recruiting. And hopefully, you know, Kaelin being there, Pyle being there this weekend, hopefully they can help seal the deal as well.
Now that you mentioned that is a good point, and you mentioned it. I want before we wrap up the show, our last segment, we almost are kind of going off, but Danny Kaelin, Danny Dimes, is an Elite 11 quarterback, the first from the state of Nebraska, not to play for Nebraska, from the state of Nebraska, to be named that. So now, when is Danny Dimes getting his 4th star? That's my question to you.
Hopefully by the second week of July, I want to say, because that'll give them time to assess everything and kind of figure out what their rankings are. And it was kind of funny. A Husker fan on Twitter, I'm not going to mention him by name, but he asked the On3 guys or in the Rivals guys, why does Kaelin not get any love in these articles? Because honestly, if you looked at any of the Elite 11 articles, Kaelin got mentioned probably like 3 times in the
Yeah.
span of a weekend. And so they're like, "Oh, we just use our formula and blah 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 blah," and it's bullshit. You know what? It's bullshit. They didn't really take a good look at Kaelin. I mean, when you looked at the Elite 11 coverage from this weekend, the event wasn't covered well overall in terms of videos and things like that. So, I don't know. I think he'll get his 4th star. If he throws 75 touchdowns this year, he needs his 4th star right now. But I think it's I think he's gonna stay where he is for quite a while, as much as that pains me to say, because I don't know if he got good enough exposure at the Elite 11 camp to warrant to warrant a 4th star in the minds of the analysts.
Yeah, and it's so I mean he's about in the composite he's probably like 100 some spots away. So I mean he's going to have to make a pretty big leap, and it's not just I mean 24/7 could boost him in their own rankings. And I'm thinking they probably will, especially because 24/7 I think they had him in the top 10 too, and then they had him in their Elite 11 rankings. I'm pretty sure. Like On3 was weird though. I just like not to bring the Michigan thing into it, but like with Jaden Davis, like they just like wouldn't rank. Like Jaden Davis was 5th by 24/7 Sports and made the Elite 11, and they just continually like didn't rank him. And it's because I think because Charles they have Jaden Davis ranked like 100 spots lower than anybody else, the Michigan. So it's like they're trying to make their analysis fit their rankings. And I don't think that's how you should be doing it. You should be watching and analyzing and then ranking, and not trying to. It's just weird to me how one service can rank a guy in the top 10 and another service doesn't even talk about him, and it's the same performance. So that's kind of like the underwear Olympics type thing. But I mean, to me, even the fact that Daniel Kaelin got this invitation, I mean, that proved only 20 quarterbacks get that invitation, right? And he actually, I think it's safe to say he performed in the upper half of that group. I mean, even if you want to say like, if you want to nitpick and say he's only in the top like 12 if you're On3 or whatever, but I think he definitely proved that he's not like the worst quarterback at the Elite 11, right? He actually won the accuracy competition. So like I know he doesn't have the huge arm. I talked about that, but I do think that he is going to get a 4th star at some point. It probably will take a while, and maybe he'll just be like a high ranked 3-star, but he'll be a 4-star in my heart. So that's all that really matters.
See, this is why we have you on the show, Chris, because you can say, "Oh, you can make it nice and say, oh, their coverage, they didn't do so well, and this is why they did this, and blah blah blah." I'll just say, On3 did a terrible job of covering the Elite 11. I mean, they really didn't do a good job at all, and it is what it is. And I, did this Nebraska fan I was talking about, earlier in the day, he kind of asked, why is Daniel Kaelin, ranked so low? And I'm trying to find the response right now, but it's just kind of crazy because even in terms of video, in terms of you know just trying to find highlights for any of these guys was incredibly hard to do. So I don't get why this event is so hard to watch.
Yeah, you'd think they'd have it on like a YouTube live stream or something, or but yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Maybe the Elite 11 doesn't like give out its rights. I'm not sure what's up with that, but I know people would. I mean, college football fans are so obsessed with these guys. I know they would watch it, and I would watch it if I could.
And actually, I found the Twitter thread of the responses from the writer to this Nebraska fan, and you know, he said, "This fan said 13th on the pro day. Your guys' point scale must be broke." And the writer said every network and staff there had different scales, just sharing hours. All 400 throws were charted. And then talking about Kaelin, this writer said, he was up and down on the long ball, which some scored with premium value was the only critique as the story illustrates. And then, there was some more talk, and, the writer finished with, you know, thanks for your feedback. So even the writers kind of just didn't want to hear any of it. And it's crazy because I think they did a poor job covering it. And, I think Kalen definitely deserved a little bit more love. He did make the final Elite 11, so there is that. But I mean, just the coverage of this event and the ability to watch this event, because I would have liked to like watch it all the way through, and it's just got to get cleaned up for next year because these writers and their scoring systems combined with the inconsistent coverage, in terms of video, made it kind of a difficult event to swallow.
And it was on the on three coverage was weird. Like here's another example. So after the first day, and this doesn't have to do really with Daniel Kaelin, but just the inconsistency with rankings is so like 24/7 Sports. They had Dylan Raiola as like the alpha dog. He was
Yeah.
incredible. Comparing him to Caleb Williams. On three ranked him like ninth. They had like Ethan Grunkmeyer as the number one guy after the first day. Which nothing against him. He's a fine player, but like, come on, how can one service look at and on three that's another one they've consistently rated Dylan Raiola lower than other recruiting services. So it's like that's another example of them, like they rated him lower than the other kid going to Georgia. It's like, come on, man, there's no way that Dylan Raiola, and I'm not, whatever, he's not coming here, like I get it, but there's no way he was the eighth best performer after the first day. And especially when 24/7 Sports is saying he's the alpha dog. Like it just doesn't make sense to me
So what's the
how.
difference between the alpha dog and the number one quarterback? Because I saw alpha dog number one quarterback below. Like,
Well, I think to be honest, I don't really know, but I think each team just like, or each service says like, oh, this guy was the whatever. It's their own, title for it. I think 24/7 just has it, but basically they ranked Raiola as one of the top performers in the same competition, and on three's got him like ninth with this. It's just like, are you? That's why I was like, come on, man, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me.
I'm gonna respond to that Twitter thread a little bit later, and but I mean, it's like, come on, like, how hard is this? Like, give us a job, and we could, like, that scouting. Thanks for the feedback. This throwing metric system places him all the way down at number 11. Like, I get he's not like a 5-star quarterback or elite, and I get you have certain movers throughout the event through different skill, competitions and things like that, but it's almost like I feel like they didn't even watch the event some days. I mean, it's crazy. It was absolutely crazy. And that's not scouting. That's just making projections based on who you like and who you don't like in terms of names.
Yeah, well, just it seemed like to me, at least the on three rankings. I didn't pay attention to Rivals because I think Rivals is not that great overall, in terms of their rankings, and
I
same
don't
with
think so either.
ESPN. Like I think ESPN and Rivals should just be cut out of the rankings altogether because they invest so little time in actually doing it.
Yeah.
Especially like ESPN's rankings, they're garbage. If anyone from ESPN's watching, like your rankings are the absolute shits. So Rivals isn't much better. But so I don't care about what those two. I read the on three and the 24/7. It really seemed to me like on three, Charles Power, whatever his name is, was definitely trying to. It seemed like he was feeding into his preconceived notions about guys where he had ranked or whatever, and that's what I felt like, watching his. It was like he was trying to make, like I said, trying to make the analysis fit the scouting report instead of the other way around. So
Because it's easy. You don't have to do much work when you do that. If you
yeah.
actually evaluated the kids, and I get that there's a lot of kids, and you can't evaluate, every single kid in the state of Texas or Florida, for example, but when you're at a competition, just try to evaluate with some objectivity to some sort of level, like, I don't
I
know,
mean, and Daniel Kaelin won an event. I mean, how many guys?
precision
I
passing.
Yeah, how many guys won an event? There's only like five. I think there was 7-on-7, and there was the pro day part of it, and I can't remember. But the fact is, the consensus, I think, from most, the scouting services, that Nebraska is getting, a steal in Daniel Kaelin, an underrated guy. I think everybody was praising his accuracy. The only knock I really heard is that, the arm strength doesn't jump off the page. I don't care about
Yeah.
that. I really don't. Like, I believe that you can improve arm strength. I mean, Tom Brady is who I always go to, like when he was at Michigan, when he got to the Patriots, he did
Yeah.
not have that strong of an arm. His arm got stronger over time, but the thing that made him great was the accuracy. And so I'll take an accurate quarterback over, like a
100%.
strong armed guy. So I feel good about that. And I don't know if it's going to happen, but damn it, you cowards, give Daniel Kaelin his 4th star. He deserves it.
I mean, or else they'll just sit on his 3-star ranking because, that's scouting. So,
Yeah.
if that's scouting, then what the hell are we doing here? We're talking to the loyal fans. That's what we're doing here. We're not selling out like rivals yet. I can't promise that we won't, but
I mean, I might sell out if I get the opportunity. So
yeah, I'm not saying if a nice check came up from On3 or something that I wouldn't leave, but at the very least, we can spout whatever we want on here without any repercussions. And apparently these On3 writers can too, because they don't know how to evaluate.
That's very true. So make sure you guys are sticking with HuskerBigRed.com for all your Cornhusker recruiting information. We've got
All the
lots
Daniel Kaelin coverage that you won't get from On3 or rivals.
Yeah, we need to try to get Danny Dimes on the show here too
I
at
would
some
love
point.
that.
But make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section, hit the like, let us know what you think, and help other Nebraska Cornhusker fans, find our videos and our podcasts. Check out HuskerBigRed.com this week. And once again, thanks for your engagement and taking the time to listen. We really appreciate it. And
Absolutely.
as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.